novelist, and my third novel is set in the financial services industry, which is where I used to work for 13 years. I was an investment banker, the much hated figure at Morgan Stanley in London for some years. The book is called On the Floor, and it features a 28-year-old woman on a trading floor who is at the centre of a deal that goes wrong. But really, actually, it's a love story set in the financial markets. That was a business that I worked in for very long and always wanted to write about. I've been writing since I was a kid, but it's finding the right way to write about an industry that's really a closed world. I just should say that I don't drink as much as the character in my novel. You know, really, I mean, she's the same age as I was. She's from Ireland, but she's a mathematical genius, or rather very gifted mathematically, which I wasn't necessarily. There was a big culture shift in the financial industry in the 80s, 90s, and that's really what I wanted to capture in the context of the global financial crisis that's happened since, because really the story begins there. The story begins there when the culture within the banks started to change, when trading became much more mathematical. And the story I think is very often talked about is the story that starts in 2008. Well, it didn't. It started then. And I'm also really interested, in all of my novels have been about work. What happens to people at work, why people work, how they feel about their jobs. I sometimes think, and I think particularly for women, that's an untold story, the effect that the workplace has on you and what it feels like to be there. So that's a really important theme in all of my books. You know, I'd always been writing, and I've been writing ever since I was a kid, but like anybody who's a big reader, you know, you become very discerning about what you actually, or when will be the right time for you to be published. And it took a long time for me to write something that I felt this is unpublished material. The other thing was that, you know, I really enjoyed the industry and I liked it. And after 15 years, it became the right time to take the risk. And if I to take the risk of becoming a writer, because there is a huge risk. You might be rubbish, your books might never sell, and you might regret that you left that, you know, well-paid job. So for me, it was about timing. Some people disagree with prizes, but I mean, I suppose my view is that anything that brings books to the public audience, it's a way of whittling down. I mean, there are so many titles published all the time. It's very important, and I think that, you know, women are under-reviewed. Female books are under-reviewed. There are few female reviewers, and there has been an argument that needs to be pushed forward. Also, the fact that it's an international prize makes it, I think, particularly interesting. So, but as a writer who's struggling in a crowded market, of course it's wonderful to be listed for something. I think that the huge advantage that fiction has in dealing with something like finance is it's a complicated subject, but let not that overshadow the fact that it's a human story. And all the time I worked in the industry, to me it was like a form of living theatre. You had the whole cast of characters, you had everything at stake, you had fantastic plots, and nobody was talking about it. Nobody was telling the stories of what it was like to be inside finance, with a few exceptions. So to me, it was very obvious real-life drama. Stories of greed, stories of money, stories of love, all of the ingredients was there. It's finding a way of writing about it that brings people into that world. And I actually think that fiction is often a much more successful way of addressing complex issues, issues like 9/11, because it's all about immersing readers in the experience of what's actually happening. And finance is a closed world, and there's this assumption that you need to understand finance in order to be able to talk about it. I disagree with that. It's a story of people making certain decisions at certain times. It's a moral story. It's a story of how what you do has great implications, and how you become shaped by the industry in which you work. So fiction, I think, is the perfect medium to address a very broad readership on lots of issues, whether it's science, whether it's finance. And I think you're seeing that more and more, that writers respond. I mean, 9/11 was a perfect example. You had a whole spate of novels. And I think these financial novels will keep coming, like the financial novels, financial movies will keep coming, because there's no easy end inside. There's no simple end inside to the crisis. Well, at the moment I'm working on a film script which is related to this theme, but a more grown-up version of the character, and a stage adaptation of the book, which I think is perfect. Can you imagine financial drama of a trading floor set within a bank, set on a stage? So, you know, bookshops and libraries have been so much part of my life, and it was the thing that made me a great reader. And when my son was born, the first place I used to take him, this is true, Waterstones, Kensington High Street, to sit there on the little stools with all of those books around, I think is incredibly important. It's the sense of books being taken into the community, and books which are increasingly commoditized, being part of a broader experience that happens outside an online environment. And believe me, I'm a huge fan of online shopping for books in particular, but there is nothing quite like the way that you browse in a bookshop. There's nothing to match that experience, which is why I'm a huge fan of bringing children there and staging events in workshops. And it's interesting to see in places like Dublin, new bookshops have started up during the recession, and there's a move towards creating the reader experience. I see is very similar to when department stores were open. People said it's the end of boutiques, and in fact you have that reversing. When you walk around places like this and you see people touch and feel books, nothing replicates that experience. And if you don't have bookshops and staff who are committed to and vocational about books, you lose something fundamental about the whole dialogue between writers and readers and retailers.